Welcome to the Shepherd Heart of Leader podcast, where we explore topics that help strengthen your ability to care for those under your leadership. In today's podcast, Nate and I are going to have a conversation about marriage. You know, marriage is not for the faint of heart, and if you keep persevering, you're going to reap the rewards of a very good time. How's that?
I like that. I mean,
you like that?
If you think it is a really good time, that's good news for me.
Marriage for the long haul, but that doesn't sound super nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, and really we're thinking a lot about it right now because we're at 30 years.
30 years of marriage.
30 years of marriage.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. There's a lot of memories tucked away in that 30 years.
Yes.
A lot of things we've gone through, challenges we've overcome. And we're definitely not perfect, but we know that you can do it. And I hope we encourage other people to stick it out and stay in the journey.
We've figured out a few things along the way. Mm-hmm. You know, we've touched on it on previous episodes about forgiving, learning how to forgive. That's been probably one of the key things in changing our expectations. But
Yeah, so what do you want to talk about now?
Well, I think let's give some of our things that we learned along the way. I would say one of the things that we've discovered is being on the same team. Mm-hmm. Being on the same team in marriage. I think when we've discovered that we're at odds with each other, that means we're not seeing each other as teammates. We're seeing each other as something that has to be conquered. So what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so when you get married, come together. You've never really been on the same team at that level yet. Of course, all the wedding ceremony, the planning, the prep, and everything else, and the spending, the financial aspect of it, the rings, the vows, the honeymoon, and then you get into real life. You're just getting to know each other. And you're moving to closer and closer being on the same team. Your commitments are there. You're going to till death do us part. But when you start, you really don't know yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't even know what your place is on the team. You don't know the definitions are the same, what a team is in a marriage. And looking back 30 years ago, I don't think I knew what I was getting into. I don't know if you knew what you were getting into. But we started off together into the brave unknown, if you will. But, you know, when I look back, there have been moments where we've had to recalibrate the new definition of team and how we needed to adjust. And, you know, the image I have in my head is whitewater rafting. Yep. And when you go whitewater rafting, anybody that's ever done it, you know, you get in the boat and they give the instructions and there's somebody help telling you what to do. But once you get out on the water, there's smooth sailing seasons. And then there's moments where you're heading for a rock. And if everybody doesn't shift their weight from one side to the other, you're going to run up against a rock and you might capsize. And so I think that marriage for us, teammate-wise, has meant that we've had to move around in the boat. Especially as we've added kids and the dynamics of what that means. My career, your career, health issues. Then you have extra expectations as kids grow up, and so our marriage has kind of moved around the boat over time. We're in the same team, same boat, but we've had to adjust how we do marriage.
Yeah, and maybe not everyone who's listening knows our story, but been married 30 years, and it was God who put us on the same team.
Yeah.
We have 4 sons who are all married now, and we actually have a 4th grandkid coming this month, so I can't believe how much has happened over the last 30 years. It's amazing. But when I think about the team, and when I get frustrated with you, I know that I have to go talk to the coach. And it's easy to talk to you and try to nag you and get you to do what I want. But you're one of those who don't like to be challenged a whole lot, or you're the challenger, and nagging doesn't work. So talking to the coach is what I've come to find helps us become a better team. So praying.
We get on our knees and
asking
Jesus
the Lord to
being the head coach, to
make the shifts for us. 1 Peter 4:10 says, God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts, use them well to serve one another. And so when we're in marriage, it's so important for us to serve one another, and prayer does way more work than nagging.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you think? What's another?
Well, the thing that came to mind when you talk about the differences between us is the zig and the zag, or the zipper, on how we aren't meant to be the same, and learning to appreciate sometimes what bugs you about the other person is actually a thing that completes you. And so like our differences, I'm not wired the same way you're wired. We see the world different, and that's okay. I think back to my visionary thought life when I was starting as a youth pastor, and then at various stages of pastoring, and then leading at the university in the last 11 years at Emmanuel. I'm always thinking on the horizon. I'm thinking, what's coming down the road, and what do I got to do to get the various pieces together? I'm kind of the frame of a picture, and you're the one that's detailed in today.
Yep.
So what do we have to do to make this part of it happen? And so you're into the details of the picture, and sometimes details can bother me. They can.
I mean, I bother you?
No, but when you're asking clarifying questions,
Yeah.
it can feel like you don't believe in my dreams, and that's not really what is going on. No, we're on the same team. You're actually trying to help it happen, and you're asking clarification for the dream. And so, I think that difference of learning to make it work
Yep.
together has been part of our journey.
Yeah, I think when we did that life plan and we had to learn about the thinking wavelength,
Yeah.
and there are people who are grinders. They want to do the same thing every day, data entry. And then you've got the minders, the people who can like run a department, but just give them one area to run. And then there are the keepers. Those are the people who kind of can see the administrative side of things and the visionary. And then there are the finders, and those are the people who like to go after vision. And then there's the conceivers, and those are like professors who have a lot of great ideas but never like act on those ideas. And when we learned about this, they said every finder needs a keeper, and you're a finder and I'm a keeper. So the details don't make sense if you don't have some bigger picture to put the details in. Mm-hmm. And the big picture doesn't make sense if you don't have the details filling in and making it happen. So every finder needs a keeper. I'm your keeper, honey.
Yeah. Yeah. And even my dreams can frustrate you sometimes on the finder part, because you're like, well, we haven't finished the last thing and I'm already off into the next thing. And doesn't mean that you're wrong or I'm wrong. It just means we have to figure out how to be on the same page together. You mentioned the life plan. There's been kind of like milestone moments in the last 30 years that really helped us stay on the same team. The life plan being one of those things. Any other things that come to mind?
Just Soul Care Conference. I enjoyed doing that together. That was fun, where we got a chance to really look internally and have some good conversations with each other and experience more freedom in our lives, even as pastors and leaders. That, and then just leaning into the kids, finding mentors, taking time to be able to talk to another older woman who I can share in my questions and concerns with, that doesn't always weigh you down, because you don't
I'm not going to be able to do everything.
Yeah.
I don't fill every single need you have. And I think when I look back, because what happens is you hit new seasons or new bends of the river, and now there's a big boulder ahead of you. How do I handle this one? I know how to handle the last one, but this one feels totally different. And I think when you get busy, it's just doing whatever you're supposed to do for a day, especially when you have kids. And when we had our sons, we had them in a condensed period of years. So 4 sons in 6.5 years, that meant that as they grew older, I had more activities. So now they're in sports, and now we didn't really it wasn't easy to have a lone Nate and Jodi time in our house because there was always something going on. We're running a kid to practice. I'm coaching. Intermixed with that was my career, and I'm traveling and speaking in different places. And you're pushing a double stroller trying to take kids.
I'd have to say that was not my favorite season.
Yeah.
I enjoyed kids. I enjoyed being a mom, enjoyed the young kids, but I did not enjoy the constant schedules of going to games over and over again. And then,
and we had to learn, that's a good point, because we had to learn where are the boundaries.
Yep.
Are we supposed to do everything that our kids have opportunities to do? And if we don't, we're bad parents? And I would say absolutely not. In fact, you drew a really hard boundary because we were doing football in the fall and basketball in the winter, and then they started baseball in the spring. And in the spring, at the time I was working at North Central, I was at one of the district councils in Illinois or something, and I was gone
all the time.
And there were like 53 practices and games between two of our sons, or whatever it was.
47 is my
I'm
favorite
adding
number
numbers
on that.
I'm sorry. But the idea was that you were sitting, it was springtime in Minnesota, it was 53 degrees outside and cold and rainy, and you were on the sidelines by yourself.
Watching the older kids pushing a double stroller with the younger two, and I'm like, this is not fun.
Yeah. And so you called me and you said, you remember what you said to me?
No.
You said, if you want the boys to be in baseball, I'm out. You're going to have to figure out how to get them there, because you're like, I have to draw a boundary to that. And the truth was, our boys didn't even really like baseball.
Yep. You were traveling a lot in the spring season. So.
But I think you had to draw a boundary of what you couldn't just say yes to everything.
Yep.
You couldn't just take it on. You had to pause and go, no, Nate, I have a boundary.
Yeah. And there was a whole family. I had to think about the two in the double stroller didn't want to be strapped in watching all those games and practices.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of their time too. Yeah.
I think we should talk a little bit about the sports thing, because the sports thing is a big question mark activity for a lot of families, a lot of marriages. And I came out of a sports background, so it was normal to me, and you didn't as much.
I played softball. I was a good right
I'm not
field.
saying you weren't athletic. I'm just saying you didn't have that as a big part of your life.
I was going to say, I was in the right field, so I wasn't like on the key spot.
You weren't the pitcher?
Yeah, I'm like, kind of had a depth perception problem, so it's like put you where the balls aren't going to come. So,
But, I can remember when our kids were like elementary age, and we're getting notices that there's this in-house basketball, there's also traveling basketball, and then there's football, and there's almost this like huge pressure that we're bad parents if we don't sign our kids up for everything, and they're going to miss out down the road. And so we jump in, and because I had a great experience with sports when I was growing up, I thought, man, I want that for my sons.
And you have to think back of when you were in basketball at 10th grade, trying out for the team, and you did not make the team. So you're like, okay, I got to get my kids a little head start.
That's true.
So that they can make the team if they want when they're in high school. So we're going to do all this.
Yeah.
But what was happening is all the parents around us were doing the same thing. So you could put your kids on one basketball team, then they're going to do the 3-on-3 basketball team, and then they're going to do the traveling summer basketball team.
Yeah.
And you got to do a camp. Oh, you didn't do that camp. You should be doing the AAU or whatever camp. And so and then it ended up being, well, your kids are good, but you're not in the in group necessarily. So the coach is picking his son's friends over the kid. It's just. Yeah. So you can do all the right things. And,
you're not going to get out.
You're not going to get the outcome, and you just spent years.
Yeah, and not only years, but thousands of dollars in your time in the weekends.
Yes.
And then you're going to tournament to everywhere and having walking tacos for lunch. Doritos with a little meat dumped in a Doritos bag, and you're eating it.
And trying to convince the younger kids why this is really fun to do.
Yeah, and we watched it with our sons because the older two were highly involved.
They loved it.
And our third son was also involved, but our youngest got tired of it.
Yeah, he's like, this is the biggest waste of time. I want to be out on a four-wheeler. I want to be outside. I want to do a different kind of sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was right.
He was right.
Yeah.
And even when we look back now, if the kids want to do it, I think we support it.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should make your kids or highly influence them to do everything. They don't have time for imagination then.
Yeah. I think we always thought, hey, this will help our kids get a good work ethic.
Yeah.
And it didn't necessarily play into a good work ethic because they could work really hard and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because if they weren't the favorite picked person or whatever, they're like, it doesn't matter. Except for football. Now, football, that was a different thing that worked out a little bit better.
Panther weight room. You know, if you go to work out, you show up, it does pay off.
Yep.
But it didn't on the basketball side of things.
Yep.
And I look back and I go, wow, that really ordered our entire family. It had an impact on our marriage. We did things to try to keep a household of faith where, if we were traveling basketball and we're in a different town, we'd go to a church in that town, and so that our kids had faith. But I look at it now, and it's like parents and marriages are so tired out, and faith becomes the last place thing because they're too fatigued to put their kids in church or go to church regularly or anything. And so, even looking back at it, I go, man, if we were to do it again, I loved coaching our kids. I loved being with them, but the moment they say I don't want to do it, I think I would just go, okay. Instead of it being about me and what I wanted to see in them, I think I would rather them be able to explore what they wanted to explore and make sure that, church is a big part of that too, because even their sports teams, their friends that they build, they become tight friends. Not all of them love Jesus. And I know that at church, I'm grateful for the youth groups that our kids were in because they were able to build good, godly friendships. But I can watch a couple of our sons and some of the friendships they had that weren't from church were not good influences on them too. So I think overall, I think I would do it different. And I would look at the impact on the marriage because we were busy for so many years.
And we were having to split. So if we weren't even sitting at tournaments together necessarily because you were taking one of the kids to one part of town. I'm taking the other one to a different part of town. They were close enough in age, but far enough away from being on the same team, I guess.
Yeah.
So close in age, but not close enough to be on the same team.
Yeah.
So So that first year with the baseball, I was just like, afterwards, I was like, boys, don't you want to just play? Don't you just want to have a summer where you can just do whatever you want? Because it was like they would play baseball and then, oh, your kid's good enough, you can make the next all-star team. And I'm like realizing later everyone made the all-star team. It was just kind of their
they
marketing.
Just wanted your money.
Yeah, so it was a marketing play to keep your kid involved all year. And if we would have opted into all those sports, they would have had like 2 weeks of summer.
Yeah.
And so they ended up taking me up on it. A lot of their friends were doing 3 sports and they did 2. So they lost a little bit there, but they gained a lot. And
and then they were like outside all the time and enjoying the neighborhood and, maybe the way it was meant to be, use their own creativity.
Yep.
But I think, as it relates to the marriage part, I think it's normal, common, if you will, to have families or marriages that are just consumed with their kids, that they don't pay attention to the marriage. And I think there were probably elements of that for you and me.
Yep.
We were committed to each other. We loved each other. We had hard conversations. But there was a point in time, I think it was when our sons were beginning to graduate, that you and I just sat down and we were just like, hey, we want to love each other when they're gone. and so we try to take advantage of a marriage conference here and there.
That's super helpful.
And there was always kind of elements of that. Or we would pick the brain of couples that were older than us that stayed in love and went through things that we were going through, and they did it successfully. And you referenced just a moment ago that it was important for you to have an older female that you could process with. And I think that was Shirley, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Shirley.
So when you look back, and of course we miss Shirley Denez, her and her husband are the founding pastors of the church and meant so much to us. They hired us as young 20s, youth pastors, and they believed in us, and they had a belief in us. And years later, we had the privilege of coming back to be leads in the same role that they once led. And Pastor Mark Denyes died the day after I was installed as the pastor at Emmanuel, and yet Shirley, she was steadfast.
Yep.
She was a praying woman, and what did she teach you? What did you process with her?
One of the things, when the kids were going through a tougher time, she would say, Jodi, the kids have to get just outside your reach before God can get them. And so really helping me to let go. And then she would just say, all of my kids, they sowed their wild oats or whatever, but they all love God now. And so just knowing that through prayer and not nagging the kids, but loving them and believing them, that they would come around, and they really all have. And so grateful for all of that wisdom. And it's important.
Yeah, I even remember you would drive over to her house, and I don't know if she made you bread or what she did. She was always cooking something, but you would spend an hour or two just processing with her, and you would come back different.
Yeah.
And even for me in our marriage, I feel like that was a huge deal, helpful, because you were able, well, for one, she understood you like nobody else. And the aspect of being a pastor's wife of a lead pastor and being in ministry, because she was also on staff when we were the youth pastors. So she literally understood. She had kids, and she was able to give you wisdom. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I probably ended up going over there, when we were at Emmanuel. So probably the last 10 years it happened. That was more, but when the kids were little and then you were at North Central, I probably talked to your mom a lot. So that was good times. All right, so let's talk about other areas of ministry. One of the things that we learned is look in the mirror and reflect. And I think, we talk about being on the same team now, reflecting, look in the mirror. It's so easy for me to point out all the things that I think you should change. That was early on. And then realizing, I've got things as well. So how the scripture says, don't try to pull the log out of someone's eye or the speck out of someone's eye when you got a log in your own. I think it's easy in marriage to become self-absorbed and try to navigate for our own needs, and then not realize, I should look at myself and recognize that I've got issues too. I think about no one gets married to have their spouse fix them. And I think we can all be a little bit guilty about that. They don't go, well, I'm so excited to get married so I can be controlled and you can tell me everything that I'm doing wrong and make me a better person. I know I've had a chance to talk to some different ministers, and, everyone's got different needs. And one guy in particular was saying, I just wish my wife would tell me how I can be better. And I said, count your blessings, because not every guy wants to always be told how to be better. Let a mentor tell you that. And as a spouse, you got to cheer for each other and comfort one another and seek the hard conversations from somewhere else. I mean, I'm not saying don't ever say the hard things. You got to do that. But yeah.
No, I agree.
Be the base of your marriage.
I think if you do the hard work of you cultivating your own garden of your heart, pulling the weeds out of your own heart, then it helps you see your spouse differently. And for us, in 30 years, there's a lot of pulling of weeds out of my own heart and looking in the mirror and being honest about it. And sometimes we don't see clearly. Scripture talks about looking like it's cloudy, it's dim. You can't really see things clearly. Someday we'll see it real clear when we're with the Lord. But, even trying to interpret what's going on in my wife's heart or trying to figure out what's wrong. I know something's not right, but I don't know what it is. If I point the finger and I'm saying, hey, it's you, and I'm not paying attention to the three fingers pointing back at me, then I could actually hurt the marriage rather than help the marriage. And for me, taking that before the Lord and saying, Lord, clean the cup, do your work in me, grow me, mature me. And it's not like you get to the point that you're super mature.
I used to always say, when will I get to the point that, when will I get to point? Yeah, you don't get to that point.
It's not about getting to the point that your marriage is perfect and you don't have to work on it anymore. It's actually like even in the last year as we become full, true empty nesters, and we're looking at each other in the evenings and like we got to get to know.
Actually, I burst into tears crying. Going, we're all alone.
Yeah. And those are the moments where you realize now I got to get to know this version of Jodi.
Yep.
And I need to pay attention to this stage and not think I've already done all the work in my own heart. No, I still got to pick up a cross today. I got to follow Jesus and my relationship with the Lord helps me love you more. If I look in the mirror and I go, okay, I can work on this, or Lord, forgive me of that bad attitude that I have, or whatever it may be, that actually helps us.
Yep.
This stage.
Get to know each other in every season. So you go two single adults marrying each other. Had a red sports car back in the day.
Yeah, you did. You paid for it, cash, didn't you?
Well, half. Then I crashed it. So.
Oh man.
Oh well. So doing, being single adults, getting married, jumping into ministry, having kids. So then we learn each other as parents, and that was an adjustment even in the beginning of how we parent and how we handle stress, because all of a sudden you got a kid crying in the middle of the night and lack of sleep, and you're like, whoa, I didn't know you like this before. And so then you grow through all the changes of parenting, and then you're parenting toddlers and elementary kids and teenagers and conferences and baseball games and basketball games and football games, and you're seeing your spouse how they interact with the refs or as a coach.
Hey, now don't share too much.
I won't share too much. Nothing to hide. And then now, as a mother-in-law and father-in-law, now we've got daughter-in-laws. We get to learn a whole new piece. And like just when you think you figured out everything with the sons, then you add more family into the mix. And then now as grandparents and then empty nesters. So it's like every season. And the seasons keep coming.
Yeah. And they're fun. If I look back, I would go, I'd let myself have more fun.
Yep.
Because everything was so serious and we have to do everything. Oh, man, I wish we had I allowed myself to have more fun.
Well, it's not too late. I used to always say I could have been nicer. I could have been a kinder wife. And our son, Timmy, reminds me, Mom, it's not too late. You still can be kind. All right. So when it comes to looking in the mirror and reflecting, it takes humility. Humility allows us to acknowledge our own shortcomings, and we'll have more grace for other people when we do that, and grace for each other. If we find ourselves as a good spouse and rant about your spouse's shortcoming, their silence is not agreement. That is one thing that I learned a little later. I thought, Nate's not saying anything. He must agree with me. And no, you weren't agreeing with me. You were just trying not to say anything else to stoke the fire a little bit. So when we look in the mirror, we're able to see what others see, including our spouse. We can see our own plank in our eye, and we need to deal with our own plank. So a few things that we've come up with that we can do to look in the mirror. We can see a counselor, which we've done that before, where it's like I'm going, work on ourselves individually. We can read books. I read a book, What's It Like to Be Married to Me? And that was a question that Linda Dillow posed in her book, and she posed these questions. What is really important to me? What does it feel like to be my husband? Am I willing to change my attitude? What will it take for me to get close to you? What is it like to make love to me? Why do I want to stay mad at you? Is it possible to grow together when things are falling apart? And so those are some great ways to reflect. What have you found to be able to reflect?
Well, reflection. Well, we're opposites. I'm an introvert probably in my processing. You're more extrovert in your processing.
And then that's funny because then you're more of an extrovert in how you relate to people.
That's
and
right.
I'm more of an introvert on how I relate.
Yeah, I've used up all my words when I come home, right?
Yeah.
And you're just getting started. You want to reflect on everything that happened and talk it out. So one of the things that actually you've been my thermometer. I know what temperature of our relationship is. by what you're expressing and talking about. If you're not happy, you let me know. And so that gives me an instant opportunity to reflect in our relationship. And that's been super helpful to me. I've read books as well that have challenged my thinking, my inner world. I tend to like to read a lot of authors. So, everything from Gordon MacDonald and Ordering Your Private World. And he's got a book he called Mid-Course Correction that he's reflecting as a minister. And he's about 25 years older than me, on the stages and the phases that he went through. And I just found that I resonated with an author like that. And then I picked the brains of some leaders in my life, the spiritual leaders that I'll process with. One of the things that I have a pastor. So even though I'm the lead pastor of the church, I have a pastor. And Wayne Benson is my pastor. Of course, he was the pastor of the church I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But when I came into Emmanuel 11 years ago, I had called him up and I said, would you be willing to come in and do what you do? He was doing consulting for churches at the time. And so he came and did a 3-day deep dive on our church and everything else, but it included a portion of our relationship. Mm-hmm. And he evaluated the energy level, the love that we have that he could sense. He's like, you guys have some transition fatigue. And we couldn't see it necessarily. Maybe we felt it, but he saw that. Then what I've done since that point is once a month I've met with Pastor Benson online, and here we are across from Zoom talking to each other. And each and every month that we meet for an hour, I start with my relationship with you. And so it's like I have a regular checkup on what's going on. And when I am in a trusted situation where I know somebody's not going to share what I'm talking about with anybody, I'll say things and he'll give me honest feedback. Sounds to me like you got some work to do on your heart, Nate. He'll give me trusted advice, and I know that he believes in us and he believes in you. So reading's been a part, but that other key component of me submitting myself to spiritual leadership has been good for me along the way. And it's helped me to really look inwardly. What do I need to change? What do I need to address? I've done counseling as well, and more from a checkup standpoint. Periodically, I don't think it's necessarily at this point broken things that we're trying to figure out. It's just a safe place to process it when I need to. As we navigated the empty nest process of our boys leaving the home and everything else that's gone on, it's been helpful to have a place to process it. And then there's absolutely no replacement for the altar, mm-hmm. personal altar, and actually just opening my heart up before God and going, Lord, I don't get it. I don't feel it. What's going on in me? The scripture says the heart can be deceitful. Who can know it? I think Jeremiah says. And then it also says that the Lord searches the heart and knows mm-hmm. the mind. And so I asked the Lord to search me. And that's a regular thing for me. If I go a couple weeks and I'm noticing that you're quiet, which is not normally you, because you want to talk and process, I start going, okay, what's going on? What's going on in me? I don't start with what's going on with you. I start with, do I need to address some things in my heart? Does Jodi not feel safe enough to talk to me? What's going on there? And it becomes more of an intimate processing between me and the Lord.
Yeah. I say you can go a couple of weeks. I can't go a day. I'm a much better Christian and wife when I get up and pray in the morning. Yeah. Every day, I have to lay it down. I know you pray every day, but I'm just saying for me, I have to reflect quite a bit. All right, so play the long game is another thing that we talk about. Living with the end in mind. This isn't all there is. Seasons change, and some are harder than others. Let your kids, when the kids are young and there's health issues and other things like that, it takes time to get good at marriage and to know each other. There are things that you need to learn, and it takes time to learn it. Yeah, there's a lot of people. It's not easy, is it? Managing our expectations, the gap between where you are and where you wish you were can become very dangerous. Talk to me about that.
The long game.
Yep.
Of course, we did a whole episode on playing the long game and everything in life. With marriage, I think that you have to update your vision and the length of your vision. When the kids are young, it's all about the days and surviving the days. You're not even thinking about years. As you grow older, as we've grown older, notice that you start thinking about years now. And even recently, now we've hit the 30-year mark. People are going, what are you going to do for the next 30? Well, I don't think anybody asked us that when we got married.
No.
Right? So things change and how you approach it. And so playing the long game includes not from just a marriage standpoint, but vision standpoint. What do we think could be? We don't know for sure. But what are the things that matter the most to us? We know that our kids matter and our families, our sons and their wives and our grandkids, top of the list. They're going to be a part of our life when we're done pastoring.
Yep.
They're going to be a part of that journey. So we begin to think about what is longer term of value to us. And I think, I have a dream of being in love with you 10 years from now and being in love with you 20 years from now. So that pulls me out of daily frustrations.
Yep.
When I can think longer with it.
Yeah, I think, when there's so many options in our society where people will hop out of marriage or whatever because they're not happy or, throw in the towel. But it's like if you play it out in your head the long term, am I really wanting this? Because, anybody, if we were going to be in marriage to make us happy, we would have been out a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully marriage will make us holier, because we're dying to ourselves and sacrificing for each other and for family and for things outside of us. But, playing it out, the scenario going, okay, the enemy can come and tempt you to quit or whatever when you're going, I'm still going to be tied to that person for the rest of my life because we got kids, Do I want to have joint custody? Do I want to, and you go, no, I don't want to play it out like that. I want to stay in for the long haul. So
yeah, and when you do hang in there, then it's even better.
Yep.
Right? Like, I couldn't even imagine ever starting over. I mean, like, we went through too much.
You went through too much to get here.
Are you kidding me?
Why would you start over? Although, yeah. All right. So then the next thing is get physical. So get an agreement.
Yes, been waiting for this one.
Yeah, get an agreement about your intimacy rhythm. Pay attention to each other outside the bedroom, and that will improve what happens inside the bedroom. If it's been years without intimacy, something is not right, and I would recommend people to fix it. Pay attention to that. If there's issues like that.
Yeah, when we talk about the physical part of the relationship, well, the 5 love languages, right?
Yep.
Great book, and each of us have different ones. So physical's real high. Would you say it's my top?
And
Where
it's
would you put it?
No, yeah, probably your top.
My top, your bottom?
Yeah, maybe.
Kinda,
That's okay.
But that's the connection, right? The tendency is to try to get out of the marriage what your need is, and you're not thinking about the need of the other person. So when you do learn to meet the need of the other person, it's funny how your needs get met.
Yep.
So, like, if I'm having good quality time with you, because you're both quality and quantity.
Hey, you're not a quality time person. You're a quantity time person. I'm like, it's the same thing.
Yeah, for you it is. Then in that sense of security that you feel, then you feel like being connected in the way I receive love. And that doesn't mean it's always perfect. And in fact, when we're busy, that's challenged, right?
Yeah.
But I can tell you, like for me, that physical part of the relationship, even God made it that way. It's important for us to stay connected.
Yep.
And it is a spiritual thing, not just a physical thing. And if the other parts of our relationship are connected, then it becomes more than a physical act.
Yep.
It becomes, no, we're one. And that's a journey, figuring that out, talking through it. In the church world, we don't talk about sex that much. And yet the rest of society does. And so there's like what are the rules? What are the boundaries on it? And I remember when we went through our pre-marriage counseling, and I think it was Pastor Steve Fenton read to us from Hebrews, and remember the marriage bed and keep it holy. That word holy doesn't just mean like spiritual. It's not like it turns into an altar or something, but to be holy means to keep it intact, whole, that you don't let other outside influences into that space. And, we don't talk about the physical part of our relationship with anybody else. That's the intimacy.
I was going to say, yeah.
That's where intimacy comes from. And we don't get our ideas from anywhere else. So we don't need to go to the sources online and everything else to try to tell us. There are some good Christian books out there that help people with that, just to kind of know what's okay and what's not okay. I mean, we got a whole generation of people that are being raised where it is the wild, wild west for what you do with your body. And so I think pursuing that holiness picture of true intimacy, waiting till you're married to have sex, that kind of thing. It kind of sounds so archaic, but that's the best. And if you've fallen short of that, then you still pursue the best from wherever you're at. And I've watched other marriages that have come out of chaos and dysfunction and sexual confusion and other things, and they follow Jesus and they have true intimacy in the physical part of their marriage. And I believe it's absolutely essential to pay attention to that. Don't ignore it. My favorite learning point in our marriage on that was the conference we went to. Was that held at Emmanuel?
Yeah, it was held at Emmanuel. Like, I recommend marriage conferences. Go to as many as you can because it is super helpful. And it gets you, as a couple, talking about things that you don't normally talk about.
Yeah.
So there was one marriage conference where the speaker was saying, comparing sex to a conversation. And he's like, women, how many of you would like it if your husband talked to you once a week? Well, that's what it's like. And I'm like, if it's only once a week. And I looked at you and I'm like, is that true? And you're like, yes. I'm like, okay, this opened up a whole new level of understanding for you because I would not want to have a conversation once a week. But
Yeah, you want to talk more often.
nope.
Yeah.
All right. So Scripture says in 1 Corinthians 7:5, do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. Afterward, you should come together again so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So, wow. All right. So get physical. I also want to talk about doing physical activities together.
Okay.
So that's been something I think has been fun that we've added into our marriage that it's given us something to do in common. So like kickboxing,
Yeah. So
bike riding.
Actually, on the kickboxing side of things, you were the first one to take a step into it. You got involved in this 10-week challenge.
Yep.
And it's extreme exercise. And you started doing, you're like, Nate, you should do this. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that.
I think I worked on you for 2 years. That's the woodpecker side of me.
Yeah. And so finally, I jumped in on it. And, I was so sore because I did my version of the 10 weeks and then started going every other day or so with you. And it was cool because we had a shared experience together doing something like that. And that was fantastic. We've done bike riding in the summertime.
Yep. And I love long bike rides with you, but then I have to define what is a long bike ride, 8 miles or less.
Yeah, because I like to go for a lot longer rides.
What's the longest you've done?
Probably 45.
Yeah. I'm like, nope. Leave me home on that one.
Yeah.
There's one time we did longer. then we're almost home. We're like a couple miles from home. And I'm like, just come pick me up. I'm done. And you're like, you can do it. I'm like, I don't know if I can. I really can't.
And you made it. And I think you did
I made it, but
23 miles or
that's
something?
right. Yeah. But I
That
make
was like
sure I ask
travel.
you ahead of time, how long is this bike ride?
Yeah. And then last year we started hiking.
Yep.
And
yeah, that was fun.
That was a lot of fun. We even went and got some hiking shoes.
But we haven't hiked since we got the shoes.
Yes, I think we have. We just haven't used the shoes to do the hiking. But it's fun because we do things together. And I discovered that you're great at hiking. Like you were ahead of me.
Yeah.
You were challenging my pace. I'm like, what's going on?
Because I like to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
I like to complete it.
Yeah.
So the last thing would be keep forgiving, learn how to forgive. And we've done a whole episode on that. And if you haven't listened to it, I'd encourage you to go back. But as shepherd-hearted leaders, we have to know how to care for our family, care for our marriage, because it starts there. You know, a mentor used to say your marriage is your passport to the pulpit. And it's our passport to, if we can't get it right at home, we can't get it right. You can't lead others well. Well, thank you for joining us for the Shepherd Hearted Leader podcast. We hope that we were able to encourage you in your marriage. Keep leaning in, keep loving each other, and until next time, keep leading well.